All right, everybody, welcome. My name is Amelia Curtis. I'm the education manager here at San Diego Humane Society, and I oversee all of our on-site education programs, including our adult lecture series, which you're attending this evening, and our youth education programs, which we typically host on site. We used to have all of these lectures on site at our different campuses, and we've been hosting them virtually over the past year, and I think people have really been enjoying that. So thank you so much for joining us in this new format. I have been busy booking our lecture series for 2021. I just kind of got started on it, and I wanted to share a little bit about what you can see coming up in January, and we'd love to have you attend. So I'm sharing my screen now. I hope everyone can see. So if you visit our website and then under programs, community programs, you'll be able to click on our calendar and see events that we have coming up here at San Diego Humane Society. So in the month of January, on the 21st, we have our pet talk that is going to be a DIY pet first aid class, and it's called Unleash Your Inner MacGyver, Tips, Tricks, and Tactics to help deal with pet first aid situations with Arden Moore, and it's going to be a really great class. Stacy has attended her class before, so she can let you know how that is, but that is the one we're going to kick it off with in January, so hopefully we'll see some of you there. We are going to have a new system for attending our programs in the new year, and so it's going to be a ticketed system. We're kind of doing a pay what you can, so you can purchase a ticket for $0, $5, $10. You can add an additional gift if you want, pay it forward, whatever you feel you would like to do. So I wanted to share that, and all of our adult lectures will be listed that way in the new year. And then on the 25th of January, we have our behavior and training lecture, How to Speak Dog and Cat. So that'll just talk through some basic body language and understanding what it is that your cat or dog is trying to tell you. So that will be through our behavior and training team leading that. So we have lots of great stuff. And then just a reminder that every Friday at 4 p.m. we do have our Humane at Home series, and tomorrow it will be a virtual adoption event, so we hope to see you there, and you can join us on that on our Facebook Live for that. So for this evening, I just wanted to just go over some housekeeping things for everybody. You can have your camera on or off, that's entirely up to you. We ask if everyone could stay muted during the presentation so our speaker can speak. She will be giving an opportunity to ask questions about midway through, and then we will have another opportunity at the end for questions. So at that time, you can unmute yourself, you can turn your camera on if you prefer to ask a question that way, or you can put it in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat. So if you think of something as the presentation is going, feel free to put it in the chat and I'll take note of that question and we'll bring it up when it's question time. I am recording the lecture this evening, so if you know someone that really wanted to attend and wasn't able to, everyone who registered will get the link to the recording, and then you're welcome to share it as well if you want to share the information on with others. And then we are also going to be following up with a thank you email and survey about our programs, and then it will include the PDF of the slides so that you can see that as well. So you'll get lots of great information for attending this evening. So thank you guys so much for being here. I'd like to welcome Stacy LeBaron from the Community Cats podcast. I'm so excited to have her here this evening. I know community cats is a great topic to discuss right now. I myself am a cat person, as you can tell from my background. I love cats, and I'm really looking forward to learning about how I can help turn my passion for cats into action, and I hope that everyone is able to learn a little bit this evening about that. So thank you so much, Stacy, and you're welcome to go ahead and take us through your presentation.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Amelia. And thank you so much to the Humane Society of San Diego. I'm going to do my screen share thing here and do that. Ooh, sorry, hold on. I have a spinner. There we go. All right. Let me just go back. Hold on a sec. Let's see here. I'm gonna have to stop share. It's my slides are a little sticky. Let me try that again. Let's see here. Get escape. Amelia, can you take the screen back from me, please?
Yes, we're no longer seeing your screen.
You are no longer seeing the screen. Okay. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Let me take it back again. Sorry for the bad switch, the bad baton pass, but try it again. There we go. Let's do that. And let's do this. All right. And does that look better? Does this look better?
That looks great. Yep.
Okay. Fantastic. There we go. Okay. So I want to say thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. We do have actually a couple of poll questions just so that I can get a sense of everybody who is out there in the big wide world. So Amelia, I don't know if we can launch the poll while I've got my screen up or if that works. Excellent. So my first question to folks is I just want to find out sort of a little bit more about who you are. So are you a volunteer or you work with another organization, you just want to learn? Other, and if you do happen to have other, then maybe throw that in the chat to let us know what that might be. So fantastic. And okay, so that looks good. A lot of folks that are volunteers, that makes sense. And then there are folks there that just want to learn. I don't know if you want to close that poll, Amelia, and share the results. Fantastic. So we have quite a few volunteers. And then we also have folks that just want to learn. So that's great too. And I don't know if anybody put anything in the chat for others, but.
Yep, we got a clinical supervisor for Feral Cat Coalition and staff at San Diego Humane Society.
Excellent, excellent, super.
And a foster with Feral Cat Foundation.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's do one more quick poll, if possible. I don't know if you can take that away. Okay, great. Do you know what TNR stands for? Yes or no? This is a really tough test. Tough poll.
All right, I'll end the poll in a couple seconds.
Sounds good.
All right, here we go. Ending now. Sharing our results.
So we got 86% of folks out there know what TNR stands for and the other 14% don't, which is fine. It's great. The presentation tonight is going to cover information that will be for folks that really know nothing about how to help cats in their community to folks that are actually working in practice and very much involved in the day-to-day. And I'm hoping I'll be able to convey some interesting information and sort of food for thought things for you to think about. So that's great. So we have a nice varied group. So, and I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. All right, so if we can close that poll and I can get back to seeing my slides. I have no mouse for some reason, so I can't close it in the presenter mode.
Is it closed now? No.
No, well, I'm still seeing the poll here, so I don't know
I
about
think
other
you
people.
can close it on your screen. I've closed it on mine.
Okay.
If
See,
anyone's still seeing it on yours, if you could let us know in the chat.
No, oh, no, not seeing it.
Okay, fantastic. I think I had to escape out of the whole thing. So let me go back into my play mode. Okay, we're back. All right, so excellent. So those were our polls, just so that I could get a sense of what folks were, who's everybody in the room and all that stuff. So tonight I'm going to talk about how to turn your passion for cats into action. I just want to share a little bit about my background. It's a picture of me with my lovely kitty Hooch, that unfortunately he passed away in April, but he was a kind soul who was willing to have his picture taken that day, even though you can tell he was not thrilled about it, but he put up with me and my needs. So anyway, I started the Community Cats podcast back in 2016. But my experience with community cats really started back in 1994 when I got involved with a group called the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society. And that organization is located in Salisbury, Massachusetts, and it was actually founded because of a colony of about 300 cats on the Newburyport waterfront in Newburyport, Massachusetts. I currently live in Vermont, so I am a New Englander at heart. So we initially got started a very small grassroots organization doing Tnr on these cats, colonies of cats at 14 different feeding stations in Newburyport and in 1992. And I learned about the organization in 1994. I had just moved recently into the area, and I found out about the work that they were doing, and they had just opened up a shelter above a local veterinarian's practice. And I heard about their trap, neuter, return program. They had feeding stations all throughout Newburyport, behind the post office. Our first phone number was the Chamber of Commerce's phone number. A lot of the businesses had cats. And so I was sort of born and raised on the concept of Tnr. That was sort of what we always did as we started as an organization. The other thing that we started when Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society first was launched was promoting early age spay neuter of kittens. So all of the kittens that did end up getting adopted through the organization were spayed and neutered at 2 pounds or 8 to 10 weeks of age. And that was because 2 of our local veterinarians that were giving us discounted rate services had read an article in a journal by the MSPCA, the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention for Cruelty to Animals, that came out in 1989, saying that early age spay and neuter was definitely a viable option and something that we should all consider to do. And we should also do spay neuter before adoption. And so we embarked on that. We never adopted out any cats that were not already spayed or neutered. That was a policy issue, and that was something that stayed with us, throughout our time. My first day at MRFRS as a donor and as a volunteer, and I'm sure many of you probably have had these starts also. I went to their new shelter thinking I was going to be able to give them enough cat litter and enough cat food to last them a month. I went with like a 30-pound bag of cat litter and a 30-pound bag of cat food, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. And they had just taken in 80 cats from a hoarding situation. And there were 2 staff members there tending to those cats. And I felt very humbled because I knew that cat food and that cat litter was not going to go very far. And I was a real education about some of the challenges that they were facing. But the 2 staff members that were there, they were the first 2 staff members at the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society, were extremely grateful. And I was so surprised. I was like, you shouldn't be grateful. This is nothing. This isn't going to cover you at all. But they were very grateful. But I knew that there was something more that I could do. And so I eventually ended up becoming their secretary and became their vice president. And then in 1996, I became president, and I stayed president and executive director of the organization until 2012. And in that period of time, The organization assisted over 100,000 cats. And we also had 2 mobile spay neuter clinics and our adoption program, and ran monthly free spay neuter clinics for feral cats in that period of time. So we grew the organization up to about 15 employees, and bought a facility, had, as I said, 2 mobile spay neuter clinics, rightfully called the Catmobile. So we had 2 Catmobiles on the road that each assisted between 3,000 and 4,000 cats a year. So there were many things, though, in the journey that got me from the beginning to the end. And so the question is, how can you turn your passion for cats, that first step, how can you turn it into more action as you go along? And I think that's what is really important, is thinking about each step that we take and how we can build and grow from there. And so ironically, my background is not at all in animals. I had no desire ever to be a veterinarian. I owned a cat growing up, but I really never thought about being a veterinary technician or anything like that. I was going to be an architect. So interestingly enough, I fell into this through volunteering. But through the things that I saw that were happening to cats in my community, I knew I could make a difference. And you just have to believe in yourself and know that you can make a difference. And you can also scale the things that you're doing, so that if you're helping one cat today, maybe a week from now, a month from now, 6 months from now, you'll be able to help 10. Maybe 2 years from now, you'll be able to help 100. And so it's just taking each one of those steps one day at a time, and you'll be able to grow your programs and scale them. So from the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society, I then moved into the Community Cats podcast, where, why did I start a podcast after I sort of retired? Basically I had run a mentoring program in my path at the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society. And I'd worked with 80 organizations all across the country, helping them start these trap, neuter, return programs. And I had 400 groups on my waiting list, and I didn't want to leave them behind. And so I felt like if I could really capture the stories of the groups that were doing some really amazing work, maybe that would be able to help other organizations as well as other individuals, because trap, neuter, return can be a very lonely job too. And so I sort of had this vision of a person out there sitting in their car, 1 o'clock in the morning, trying to get that last cat trapped, and they're drinking their coffee, and maybe they could listen to a podcast at that time and not feel like they're so alone. And so that's my, has been my interest. And then the Community Cats podcast has continued to grow into educational programming, and I'll get into that some later. Oh no, sticky, my thing is not going, sorry. There we go. So I want to share another story. I love stories, I'm sorry. So I'll be sharing a lot of stories, but another story that I really love. Oh, and I'm so sorry. I see a woman with a calico kitty on her lap, and she's beautiful. Sorry, I get distracted by the cats. My aha moment, another thing that really made an incredible impression on myself was I had an instance where I used to handle all the intake calls or the surrender calls. And so I'd have these lists and lists, and I'd have, my colony list. And back in the days before we had really a solid Excel, I'd have these handwritten spreadsheets. And there was a bar just like 5 miles away from our shelter. And they said, we've got some kittens behind here, and, I need some help with them. And so I was like, sure, I'll come take a look, and we'll see what we can do. And in this dumpster was about 40 kittens that all had at least one eye that was going to basically need to be removed. And then in the woods, we saw these like 60 adult cats kind of looking at us going, huh? And the kittens were in this dumpster, and there was like broken bottles all over the place. It was like, it was basically, a beer advertisement with the broken bottles with these kittens climbing all over everything. And, I just walked in there and I looked at that picture and I said, you know what, we just don't need to see this anymore. This doesn't need to happen. This is just not right. And so I think also we all need to identify what our aha moments are, because these are the moments that really cause us to want to make a change, make a difference. And so for me, I knew I had to do something about that particular situation, which we did. We trapped those kittens, we brought them in, we got them the medical treatment that they needed. They got fostered, they got adopted out. But that also, and all the adults got trapped, neuter, returned. It was near big apartment complex. And so that could be one of the sources for where a lot of those cats were coming from. And that location, hasn't had any cats, since then with continued monitoring. But that scene is something that I know is seen in other places, and I don't want it to be seen elsewhere. So if we can continue to work and take it one colony at a time, we're going to make a tremendous difference in reducing the number of cats that are out there, and reducing the number of kittens that are experiencing any sort of suffering out there too. It's a tough life out there for kittens, and that was definitely an aha moment for me to see something of such large scale. And I really wanted to make it so that, we just weren't going to see that again. And I would love to hear later when we get into the Q&A if there are folks that have their own aha moments, and they'd be interested in sharing that with me. And so just going to go here. So I want to talk about some of the first things that you can do right now to help cats. I just want to click down. So the first thing is, and it seems simple, but get to know your neighbors. I'll be honest, I know some of my neighbors, but I don't know all of them. But get to know your neighbors so that then if you do see cats in your backyard passing through, you can ask, do you know anything about this cat? Is this new cat? Is it, have you seen it? Are you feeding this cat? We are less connected in a physical way with our neighbors than we've ever been. We're much more connected with regards to Facebook. People, when they find a cat and think it's a stray and they post it as a found cat, they're going to post it on social media before they even ask their next door neighbor if they know anything about the cat. And so I really want to stress how important it is for us to, if possible, to have some sort of communication with our neighbors and relationship with them, so that then, we want to be able to have a communication with them about cats. Another reason why you want to get to know your neighbors is if there's a group of cats that you are taking care of in your backyard, and if for some reason they are causing problems in the neighbor's yard, you'll already have a relationship with them, and you can negotiate some solutions that will work for them. So I will say also, I have a love-hate relationship with social media, excuse me. And, but I do think that there's a role for social media in terms of how to help cats in your community. A high percentage of cats, if you see a cat in your backyard that is, looks good, well cared for, may have some other identifiers, you don't necessarily need to think about worrying about that cat being unowned. It very well may be owned, and it may be able to go back to its home. So we do have to be careful about the cats that we decide to take in or take to a shelter, because in many cases, an outdoor kitty does have somebody caring for them already. So there's just a level of due diligence that you need to do. We certainly don't want to bring cats that are owned into shelters. And so I think that there's a level of community responsibility and stewardship that we need to do to make sure that we're not grabbing anyone's kitty. Also, it's approximately 25% of people get their cats either as a stray from their backyard, or from a friend who's given them a cat that may have been a stray in their backyard, or what I'll say, a stray. And maybe those cats were owned by somebody else and they were taken in as a stray by accident. So there are quite a few things that we do now in order to really do our due diligence and prove that the cat is truly homeless. And so we just have to have some patience and willingness to be able to go through that process. Best things you can do for your own cats is get your own cats microchipped and give them identification. So whether it's, the microchip is a great identifier if a cat is brought into a facility or to a veterinarian and scanned there. Some fire departments, police departments also now have scanners, so they can sort of scan cats on site if there's a really friendly cat that's found and needs to, can have a microchip scan that way. But also breakaway collars are another option. And then there are other forms of identification too. And then lastly is under my thing here. So whoops, there it goes. Bye-bye. What was the last one, Amelia? What did the last one say? Because I have the pictures are here.
I didn't catch it. Are you able to go backwards?
No, I don't.
Ear tipping.
Woo.
The
Maris-
ear tipping.
Oh, about ear tipping. The best part. So ear tipping. Thanks, Marisol.
You're welcome.
So yes, so for folks that don't know what an ear tip is, it's a little splice off, at least in the East, it's on the left ear. I don't know in San Diego if it's the left ear or if it's the right ear, because I think in Oregon it's the right ear. So, but it's a little flat cut on the ear, and that will identify for you where that the kitty has been spayed or neutered. And so it's it's easy. So as long as the cat is healthy and if it's got an ear tip, I wouldn't worry about it. Just let it pass through your yard. So that's definitely, it's a universal way of identifying how how cats are when they're spayed and neutered. So when should you get involved with cats that are outside? So if you do a visual exam, what's called a community cat check, Monica Frienden has coined that term. She's from American Pets Alive, and I think it's a good term to have. So if you see a cat and they're injured, malnourished, have visibility issues with their eyes, have some visible concerns, disease concerns going on. If that visual exam shows something of concern, then you're going to need to get involved and try and help that cat. If you see kittens, that's another area of concern. Kittens, we want to make sure that they are brought in at an early age and socialized and adopted. And, we don't want to have to return 16-week-old kittens if we don't have to. If a colony of cats is impacting your yard significantly, and you don't like that, then there are alternatives. You can put alternative housing, shelters. There are repellent treatments you can use. So there are those options. If you feel that the cats are impacting your yard, you can do that and address those issues. Impacting significant wildlife. So in some areas, their wildlife is protected in a certain way, and we have to ascertain whether or not, cats are invading that protected area or not. Certainly, trap, neuter, return is the best solution for handling cat populations in those areas. And I will go into a little more detail with that later. And large populations of cats. So if you have a really, significant, 100 cat population for a colony is probably not ideal. I mean, certainly depending on the size and the scale of it, but really the purpose of trap, neuter, return is to reduce the overall outdoor cat population. And so you really should strive to get to as close to 100% sterilization as possible, and see a reduction in the population that's out there, and work on doing that. I know there are a lot of people out there that feel that you should only get to 80% and you're okay. I unfortunately unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you think about it, I'm a believer in the fact of trying to get every cat spayed and neutered and not leaving unsterilized cats behind. So how to get started doing TNR. I'm going to just go through a few items here. So first, folks that did the early poll, what is TNR? Most of you know what TNR is, but it's trap, neuter, return, and it's called many other things. There's TNRM, which is trap, neuter, return, manage or management. And then there's TNVR, which is in Florida. I think a lot in Florida, and I think maybe some in the Midwest too. Amelia, I don't know in San Diego what terms you use. Feel free to share, but TNVR is trap, neuter, vaccinate, return. So Amelia, what is it in San Diego?
It's typically TNR, but I'm going to welcome people to put in the chat if there are other ones that you are familiar with, either here in San Diego or in other places.
Sounds great. And then the different ways that cats are identified. So as I said, they are identified with an ear tip. There's a left ear tip, there's a right ear tip. There are some areas of the country they will do both ears, or they'll do right for one sex, left for the other sex. But in general, I'd say the largest population does either left only or right only ear tip, which is just a little flat cut. It's a 1/4 inch in off the ear, and it's a little bit of a trim there. Okay. So back to getting started. So one thing that the Community Cats podcast does offer is a Tnr certification workshop. We do these workshops on a monthly basis, and it's usually the first Saturday of every month. I'm touching just a little bit of the surface on what's covered during those presentations. You'll see a couple of videos from the folks at Neighborhood Cats. These webinars are presented by Neighborhood Cats and hosted by the Community Cats podcast. We'll see a couple of videos from them here, but it's really a tremendous deep dive. And if you are interested in learning how to do trap, neuter, return in your community, it's really a great starting point to learn about how to make an impression in your community and how to be able to share. Also, we'd love to encourage you to share with others, and having a certificate sometimes too will help you get spots in a clinic, in a low-cost spay neuter clinic or with a Humane Society. It gives you a leg up to say, hey, I've got a certificate, I've done a training, I've invested some time in this. So I really would hope you might consider checking that out if you are thinking about learning how to be a trapper and learning how to do it safely. Because I probably can tell you there are a lot of people who have trapped cats and have made mistakes and wish they hadn't. So it's really a helpful educational tool. So, so when you get, say you've got some cats in your backyard and you want to assist them, or cats at a local coffee shop or something like that, have you checked with the neighbors? Have you done your due diligence, checking in with them and making sure that they really have, these cats really need trap, neuter, return, or a trap and rescue. So or just trap, neuter, return and helping the neighbors, or is it just getting your neighbor's cats fixed too? So they might be own cats, and so you might be just helping to get your neighbor's cats fixed too. So it's you really do need to check in with the neighbors. Some organizations do require that you flyer in the area before any trapping happens. So you should also check with local organizations too, to make sure that you're following any protocols that your local organizations recommend. Working with a veterinarian, and there's a clinic vet technician out there in our audience tonight, which is great. Really making a great solid relationship with your veterinarian is important. So before anyone does any trapping and bringing any cats into a clinic, they have to make sure that they've got an appointment, an arrangement, an understanding how the cat's going to be brought in, what humane trap do you have, really that you've all done your due diligence on that. So also you want to start out feeding the cats on a regular basis and on a regular schedule. Many people scatter feed and they just think, oh, well, I'll just throw like a handful of crunchies down on the ground or something like that. And that's really not as helpful as as it is if you feed in a clean, organized way on a regular time frame. And ideally, you don't want to leave food out overnight. You want to just feed at, some people feed in the morning, they feed at night, and they just want to, you know, put food down for half an hour at a time and then pick it up so that it doesn't attract others. And so that's usually the best way to handle your feeding, depending on the colony situation that you're dealing with. One other thing, when I'll go back here to say, have you checked with your neighbors? You also want to make sure your neighbors aren't feeding the cats too, because if you want to trap those cats and they're getting fed someplace else, a cat's not going to go in a trap to get food if they've got food available next door with someone else. So that's really one of the biggest challenges, is to trap a cat when a neighbor is not, or somebody in the area is not willing to pull food, or you don't know that they're even doing it. That's really a big challenge. So these are examples of 2 humane traps. There's the True Catch LTD and the Tomahawk trap, just to give you a visual picture of what those traps look like. Just thought I would share with you that. We do have a relationship with Tomahawk Live Traps. So you use the code DCNC20 and you can get 10% off an order of a trap there, if you're at all interested with that. So this is a video that just shows, it's a basic video just showing how to set up a trap and how a cat will go in it. So it's very, very basic, but I thought it would be good to show. And I do want to do a big shout out here to Neighborhood Cats for allowing us to use this video. And so I'm going to get this going. And Amelia, shout out if something is wrong, but I'll turn my volume up as high as possible too.
It is the model 606 NC box trap from Tomahawk Live Trap. It's a 30-inch trap, and it's one of the most popular models used for TNR. The trap comes with a front door, a trigger, and we'll take a look at how to set the trigger in just a minute. Here in the middle is the trip plate, and at this end is the back door. So now we're going to look at how we set the trap and get it ready to catch a cat. So the first thing we need to do to set the trap is put our bait inside. To do that, we have to unlock the back door. The door comes equipped with a latch here, and it hooks into a loop. Unhook it, and then we open the door. This is a guillotine style door, so it slides up and down in this track. So we raise it up, take our dish of bait, put it right inside the back door, lower it again, and then we're going to take our latch and hook it onto the loop again, and now it's locked. And it's always a good idea to make sure that you've locked it properly. Just take the back door and give it a little upward tug, and should be all secure. This is the front door of the trap. I'm going to show you how to open it. First of all, see that it comes equipped with a handy little thumb loop here at the bottom. So you're going to just put your thumb inside that loop, push the door in, and lift up. So now we're ready to set the trap. The first thing we need to do is find the trigger, and it's right there. It's a little hook that you'll find just at the top left of the trap inside the front door. So to set it, just take your finger and push it forward until the hook is resting on the little brass cylinder that's right in front of it. Once that's done, your trap is set. Now that the trap has been set, notice that the trip plate has raised up off the ground. When the cat enters the trap and moves towards the back to get the bait, it's her weight stepping on the trip plate that will force the front door to close. Now we're going to put in our trap mat. You can do this before or after you set the trigger. Add a little trail of bait to the trap mat, just a little bit to tempt the cat. Don't overdo it and fill him up before he gets to the bait dish. We find it's handy to tuck a folded sheet into the handles of the trap before you set it out in the territory. That way it's ready to use when you need to cover your trapped cat. If it's a windy day though, don't do that because the sheet can flop around in the breeze and maybe scare away a cat. So the trap's all set. As you'll learn, it's important to position the trap next to something, not sitting out in the open. So we're ready to catch a cat, and now all we have to do is wait. This is the True Catch Model 30 LTD. It's a 30-inch trap. It's another popular choice for TNR. This trap has a front door, a trigger located here on the right at the top. It has a trip plate over here in the middle, and a back door. Notice how we also have two carabiners attached to the handle. Now, they're not actually part of the trap, but you will need them to lock the doors. Now I'm going to show you how to set the True Catch trap. So the first thing we need to do is put our bait inside. To do that, take the handle of the door and pull it straight up. Take your bait dish, set it right inside the door, and lower the door. When you lower the door, make sure that the handle is on the outside of the hook, the loop that's on the frame, right there, it's on the outside. Next, we'll take our carabiner and hook that over both metal bars. And then we can just give a little upward tug and make sure that that's secure. Now we're going to set the trigger of the True Catch trap. First thing we need to do is open the front door. So you'll see that the door is equipped with two metal rings. Take one ring in each hand, slide them to the top of the trap, take one finger and put it through the mesh of the door. Just pull the door open. There you go. The trigger is made of two crossbars. One is attached to the front door. The other is on the side of the trap, and it leads all the way back to the trip plate. To set the trigger, lift the side crossbar and rest it against the other one so that they're at about a 90-degree angle. Just like we did with the Tomahawk, we're going to add our trap mat with a trail of bait on it, put our sheet under the handle, and now we're ready to go. Now we've got our cat. Before we move the trap, we need to make sure that it's locked. So we're going to go and get our second carabiner, which is hooked to the top here, and then go back to the front door. Lift the trap up just a little bit, and then go to the metal ring and hook the carabiner through it, and then also hook it through the bottom of the trap. Now the door is secure and there is no way that kitty can escape.
Excellent. All right. So at this point in time, Amelia, I am going to pause and see if anybody has any questions.
All right, so if you have a question, you can unmute yourself. You're welcome to turn your video on, or you can pop it in the chat and I'll ask it for you. We did have one question come up in the chat, and I can, earlier, I can ask it right away if you like. Vivian says there's a feral cat hanging out in our backyard. It's getting more friendly since we're feeding him or her every day. Let me pet him or her on the back while I'm putting the food down. I wonder if I can bring him in for a checkup or vaccinations. I don't know how it will react inside a carrier. I think it might be neutered or spayed since there's a small clip on the left ear. I have indoor cats that have access to an outdoor enclosure. They have some contact with the outdoor cat through the nettings, but not directly. Just want to protect my cats from any infectious diseases.
So yeah, so I can address that. If the cat has an ear tip and is appears to be already spayed or neutered based on the fact that there's an ear tip, correct me if I'm wrong with regards to California law, but in New England, you need to vaccinate against rabies, as well as at the time of doing a spay-neuter surgery. In most cases, it's very unheard of, basically. So there's a pretty safe assumption that the cat would have a series of at least a rabies vaccination. Now, whether or not that rabies vaccination can last for years and years and years. I mean, the general rule is they only last for a year or up to 3 years. So, I mean, if you wanted to trap the kitty to get his or her shots boosted, you would need to trap the cat. They would need to anesthetize the cat to be able to examine him properly. In most cases, I mean, I'm not able to specifically see the cat, but if it's has some skittish behavior, it's safest to have the cat in a trap rather than trying to get the cat in a carrier. And then, you know, the trap, you're able to see how that cat behaves. And I mean, if the cat is calm, then maybe you can, maybe, you know, the staff at the clinic can evaluate the cat better. In terms of disease issues, so there's the two main ones are feline leukemia and FIV, feline immune deficiency virus. And those are two diseases that are not, FIV is only transmissible through extremely deep bite wounds. So it's only through cats that are really doing some significant fighting, which usually happens between unneutered males. And so I would not recommend testing any outdoor cats for feline leukemia or FIV. Feline leukemia is also a result of an overpopulation situation, and disease rates are significantly lower in a sterilized environment. So I wouldn't worry about that, especially if your cats are in a catio and this cat is outside. They're not in any sort of cross paths where you'd have to worry about that. So hopefully that answered her question okay.
And then Debbie asks, if I encounter a cat with an ear tip, is there anything else I can do for him or her if the cat looks healthy besides feeding the cat?
The alternate, you can give them shelter. I guess in San Diego, if you're in San Diego, we're talking more heat rather than winter. Here in New England, we are talking about shelters, but even shelters just in general to have a safe space. So that there are shelters that, meaning either like dog igloos, or you can use a Rubbermaid container and cut a couple of holes and put some straw in there. You know, places where the cat can feel safe and cuddled up and that kind of thing. There are people who let feral cats come up on their porches and get fed that way. So it's really up to you and how involved and how engaged, you know, you want to be with regards to the cat. But if there's a cat out there that looks good and is ear tipped, you don't have to feel incredibly obligated to do more than what you might be doing at this time.
And then Kim asks, how many community cats, both feral and stray, would you say are in the United States? I've seen different numbers on this with a huge range, anywhere from 30 million to 100 million. The Humane Society of the United States estimates 30 to 40 million on the conservative end. What number do you go by?
Yeah, I tend to be on the lower side of things. I'm going to talk about the numbers a bit later. So I'll make a note to myself here, and I'm going to add numbers in the US. How about that? And I'll make a note, and maybe we can do that calculation for the whole country and see what numbers we come up with on that. So I'll just hold that question.
Okay, and then there's two that are kind of similar. Will a cat stop trusting a person after that person traps him or her? And then is there a way to reduce the fear of a cat you're trapping? People always feel bad capturing the cat because it might scare them.
Yeah, I mean, it is that's one of the reasons why our trapper training series is so important, because people will see videos of cats being trapped, and it can be a bit disconcerting to see your first cat trapped, because they don't like being trapped and they get nervous, and that's why it's so critical to get them covered right away. Will they trust you again? Yes, they will, because cats can be very food focused. So if you are their feeder, they will forgive you, but it may take a few days or a week or so, but they will come back and they will trust you, unless they have a feeder someplace else and they decide to, go to the person feeding them down the street. So, I mean, if they have an alternative and they're really mad, then they might, they might not come back your way. But if you're their only feeder, they'll stay with you and they'll come back. And especially if it's a bonded colony of cats. So say you're feeding, 6 or 8 cats and their siblings and that kind of thing, they'll stay with their group.
And then there was a question asking when San Diego Humane Society will be doing our TNR program again. So our program as of 12/14, so quite recently, has been put on pause due to coronavirus and just limited staff on our campus. So we are currently If a cat is already ear tipped and appears healthy, they should remain where they are. And then if they are sick, injured, or in danger, then we can admit them. So you would need to make an appointment. And then all kittens under 6 months as well, you can bring to us. So that's just an update. We will be updating that, of course, as soon as we can with more information as we navigate through coronavirus and managing our medical staff and all of our staff that we can have on site. But we're hoping to definitely expand this program very, very soon.
It's been a big challenge all across the country with regards to veterinary capacity, or capacity to care is another way people are phrasing it. But in a lot of the areas that I've had involvement with, there's just been so many communities that even the private veterinarians are overbooked. And because all the new COVID protocols, they're not able to handle as many appointments on a daily basis, and therefore they're getting backed up. And so it's extremely important, if you do get slots for spaying and neutering feral cats, that you make sure those slots get used, and you don't, because there are times sometimes where we would book six slots and a trapper would only bring 3 or something to a veterinarian's, and that really harms a relationship. So you want to make sure that when you say you're going to bring in X amount of cats, make sure you make the most of those appointments, because there are probably a lot of other cats waiting for those slots.
And there's a couple other in the chat. I can keep reading them to you if you like.
Yep. Go for a couple more, and then I'll go back to the slides.
Okay, great. Can other animals be trapped in the trap? Or does that happen? I'm assuming.
Yes. Yes.
I imagine that happens a lot.
So
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, yeah, so you will, upon occasion trap a skunk or something like that. And there are safe ways to release those animals without getting yourself in trouble. And those are some of the things that the neighborhood cats training would assist with, showing you how to deal with that, as well as, how to deal with things. We have a colony caretaking webinar and talking about how to prevent bugs from getting into the cat food and that kind of stuff too. So there's a lot of tips and tricks out there, from trapping to colony care to using a drop trap, which is something that I don't talk about in this presentation, but a drop trap is a more advanced form of trapping tool that you would use in your toolkit of items to be able to get that last cat in the colony.
And then here's a good one about cat beds, the igloos and those types of cat beds for the winter time. What is the best practice for when to provide a cat bed when it drops below a certain temperature? And this is speaking about San Diego, where it doesn't get too cold. Is it still best practice to provide a warm bed?
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I said, I think that it's more about safety and protection versus warmth. So it really depends on the environment that they're in. I mean, do they have a place where they are already feeling, protected and comfortable, or do they have access to being under a shed or something like that? So that if they already have access to a good hiding place that you're okay with, then maybe you don't need shelter. It depends on the environment, what you have access to. But you can even buy, online, these nice little fancy feral cat houses. And I'm sure cats would appreciate that. So, but some people sometimes have to sort of even train cats to get used to going into those shelters too. So, there's a risk involved too. If you invest a lot of money into sort of a fancy house for your cats and they still stay under the shed all the time, are you going to feel let down about it too? So, I mean, cats can never have too many options. So it's really up to you. If you want to make your yard into, a cat sanctuary, that's totally an option. That's up to you.
And this one is a personal story about a cat that they've met. If a stray cat disappears when he or she was being fed, what are the chances they will come back? I and a few neighbors were feeding a stray. We haven't seen him in about 3 weeks now. He had an ear tip, No one was able to touch him, but one neighbor was hoping to adopt him. We're all very sad, but have been hoping he comes back. He had been in this area since at least March, and one neighbor thought he had been abandoned.
So there's lots of options of things that had happened to him. I just literally heard a story today about a feral cat that was trapped 2 years ago and then fed for a couple of weeks after he was released. And in a town in Massachusetts, he was microchipped when he got spayed and neutered, ear tipped also. So the microchipping is the key part of the story here. The kitty disappeared 2 weeks after that. The person who had got the kitty spayed and neutered was very upset, felt like the worst probably happened to the cat, blah, 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 had not seen this kitty at all in the last 2 years. And a couple days ago, she got a phone call from a veterinarian in a town called Middleton, which was 10 miles away. It turned out somebody's been feeding this cat for a year. So this cat traveled 10 miles away, has been fed by this person for a whole year and brought in to do booster vaccines, like the person earlier was asking about the kitty with the ear tip and, should she trap the cat and bring the cat in for vaccines? And they scanned the cat and they called this person up to say, by the way, we want to just tell you this cat's doing well and has a family taking care of him as a feral kitty, 10 miles on the other side, 10 miles away. So it was a very happy story there. So it also, if you do trap your cat, trap the kitty, bring the kitty in, kitty should get scanned for a microchip. And if the kitty doesn't have a microchip, you should microchip the kitty too.
All right, and then we have one final question in the chat. How much does the Neighborhood Cats workshop cost?
Oh, $10. Yep, just $10. And with that, you get, you'll get your certificate. You get to take a TNR test. You get to take a quiz to get your certificate, and you'll get access to the video for at least a year, I believe. So that's great. So I'm going to keep going with my slides. We actually are going to run into another video that I want to make sure that we have time to share. So if we can, we'll hold the rest of the questions until the end, but I'll cruise through my slides so we have plenty of time for questions because these are great questions. All right, so what happens next? So, so you want to hold the kitty in the trap until going to the vet. So I'm just going to share some quick tips. Like I said, I mean, the Neighborhood Cats folks, they go in greater detail, but I can share some things. So you want to make sure that you're going to hold the cat after you've trapped them, and make sure when you have your car, make sure you have plastic in your car. Ideally, you want to hold the kitty in a location that has climate control, so it's not too hot, not too cold. Some people in urban areas will hold in their bathrooms. Other people will hold in a heated basement. So sometimes holding is a very challenging thing in urban areas. So if you are a person that's willing to be like a foster holder person, that would be hugely great and helpful. But it's important to make sure you have a good environment for the kitties to be held. And I will say, I don't think I addressed it specifically in here, but when the cats are trapped and then they're brought in for surgery, ideally we want to release them within 24 hours after surgery. Especially with neutered males, you want just to be able to release them and get them back out there as fast as possible. Spayed females, 24 hours should be fine. Sometimes you might want to extend it to 48 if there was an older kitty, so it's having a more complicated surgery, or if there was anything that you were concerned about. So just something to think about, but really you don't want to have it be extended stay for these cats. So how to transport kitty. So you want to have the kitty in your car securely, or your van. A lot of people use, RVs or something like that, or SUVs, not RVs, sorry, SUVs. And they will have the cats lined up in there. Lots of plastic in your car, so that then if a kitty has an accident, you're not going to have your car smell like that for a long period of time. So make sure you come prepared with a lot of cleaning supplies and new linens. And sometimes when you bring your kitty in with linens to the clinics, sometimes they don't keep those linens with the trap. Sometimes what comes in doesn't come out. So just make sure you don't use your like best set of sheets when you're doing this kind of work. And also some people get really upset because like they color code things, and I mean, not color code, but like, I don't know, color coordinate things and all that kind of stuff. So just, make sure you clearly communicate whether it's something you want to make sure gets returned to you or not. Make sure your traps are clearly marked and identified. And you also want to make sure that you have a record of what cat was in what trap and at what location, so that you don't get those cats confused, especially if you're trapping at multiple locations. I just addressed also how long to hold the kitty. And then when to release the kitty. So unless you're having like a hurricane, torrential downpour, it's definitely best to return the kitty within 24 hours. Ideally, don't go longer than 48. Where to release kitty. So you want to make sure you release the kitty back in the same area where you trapped them. Make sure you have a release location so that they're sort of pointing back into sort of their homestead. You don't want to open a trap out like onto a street with cars. And I know it sounds like it's something obvious, but just making sure that you're thinking about, how you're directing the cat for release. Some cats aren't going to want to go out of the trap right away. They're going to be still, they're going to be a little bit nervous. So you might have to gooch the covering back so that then they get motivated to go find a dark spot to go hang out and sort of recover. Just, make sure that, and I would, do everybody at one time. The best thing you can do is if you have a colony of 6 cats, colony of 10 cats, get all 10 cats trapped. Don't get 2 or 3. And I know with vet appointments, that could be challenging. But it is when we do have access to more vet appointments, the easiest way to control a population is to get the whole group trapped and not do sort of onesies, twosies. But I know right now are difficult times. So if you do onesies, twosies, and if you are able to use the drop trap, if you can focus on getting the girls first, that would also be helpful, unless your clinic specifically would rather have boy cats because they can do more because it's an easier procedure. So just to have conversation with your veterinarian to see what they recommend. But if you have to prioritize, try and prioritize getting as many spays as possible. All right, and here's another video from Neighborhood Cats, which just shows a little bit about sort of the holding process and how a group of cats are held and cared for. So thank you again to Neighborhood Cats for allowing me to use these videos.
Log the cats as they come in, identifying both their trap number and the colony they came from. It's especially important to do this if you're trapping multiple colonies at the same time. The traps become cages, which the cats never leave prior to release, except during the spay-neuter surgery. To set the trap up as a cage, start at the front door. Get the cat to move to the opposite end by pulling back the sheet. Ferals tend to move from light to dark. Insert 2 trap dividers back to back from above. You should always use 2 because the occasional cat is strong enough to push his way through 1. Open the door and place newspaper on the floor. Always remove any dirty newspaper and waste before putting fresh newspaper in. Shut the front door, remove the dividers, and cover up the front end of the trap again with the sheet. Go to the rear door and again pull back the sheet. Then insert the dividers. Open the door and place newspaper inside. Then put in food and water. The water should be in a low, flat container to help prevent it from getting knocked over. Close the rear door, double checking to make sure the latches are secure, Then remove the dividers and cover the back of the trap with the sheet. This method of feeding and cleaning should be done twice a day to minimize smell and to keep the cats as comfortable as possible. Sometimes the light to dark trick doesn't work and the cat won't move. Try tapping the side of the trap lightly and shooing the cat. If that doesn't work, you might need to use one of the trap dividers to give him a little push. Contrary to many people's first reaction, it's fine to keep cats in traps for several days. Feral cats actually prefer tight, dark spaces over something like a large open cage, and they adapt quickly.
All right. So when Brian's talking about keeping them in traps for several days, he's really referring to a mass trapping. So if they're trying to trap a large number of cats and then you're holding for a couple of days before everybody's going in for their surgery, that's sort of what he's referring to. And one other thing that they are not doing is the water is they're making the wet food very soupy. And because the cats just kept making a mess with the water. So instead of giving cats water now, they just give them very liquidy like wet cat food as a way for them to stay hydrated. So that's just a little bit of a change. That video is from their days in New York, and now they're trapping in Maui. So they've got a whole different environment going on there. All right.
There's
Yes.
two questions that actually are kind of related to that. One is, are they monitoring, like when they, in that video, when they would give food, because for surgery, would you not want them to have eaten kind of close to the surgery?
Right. So depending on what your veterinarian recommends, for kittens, sometimes you are, allowing water, but pulling food, 6 or 8 hours before they have surgery, depending on things. And with the adults, so it's going to depend on the clinic's protocol. But yeah, you do pull food before they have their surgery. So this is while they're either waiting for them to trap everybody else, or if it's after surgery and once they're fully awake and recovered. Ideally, it's just like people in the hospital. You want to see the cats eat, pee, and poop before they get released. And so, after they've woken up sufficiently, if you want to give them a bit of a meal. And like I said, some veterinarians do a reversing, so the cats wake up very quickly. So there's just some variation there that you need to communicate with your veterinarian. But yeah, food around surgery, you need to follow some specific guidelines.
And then the other question was just related to care, if they're going to the bathroom a lot while you are having them for a while. Is newspaper the material you'd recommend, or are there any other recommendations?
Well, all depends on the size of the trap. And really, there's not a lot of real estate there. So probably newspaper is your best bet, but I'm sure there might be some other alternatives depending on the size there. I know the little, those little cardboard things where you get your Fancy Feast, the cases where you get your Fancy Feast cans in, those are sometimes small enough to fit in with a little bit of cat litter in on one side. So I have seen sometimes some of those cut up to be shaped the right way to fit in there. But ideally, number one, when you take the cat to the vet, they don't want anything in there, because they need to be able to inject the anesthesia in the cat. So they're going to use those forks to push the cat in the corner to do the injection. So whatever you get in there, you're going to have to take out. Some people, will transfer cats into cages. Maybe if you want to evaluate them, if they're kittens, that kind of thing. So, probably once you make a choice, if you're going to be doing an evaluation, you would want to move them into a different environment.
And then one last question related to this, to the surgery. Why would we release so soon after surgery?
Because cats are stressed out in the traps. And so if you get to like day 2 or 3, their statistical chances of getting an upper respiratory because of the elevated stress levels on the cat, it's a much higher chance that they would get that. And so they really wanted, I mean, it's sort of like the human hospital, they're now sending you home. I mean, my cousin, he got his hip replaced and he went in the morning, he came out in the afternoon. I mean, they don't want you in the hospital anymore. And that's sort of the same attitude for the cats, is that you want to release them as soon as possible so that they don't have a chance of getting sick due to the elevated stress levels. So, all right, so I'm going to cruise through the big picture issues. I'm going to check my watch here. We've got about 15 minutes. So I'm going to cruise through some of these bigger picture ideas. Make sure I get to the question about the numbers, how many the numbers of cats. So let's cruise through these slides here. So where do community cats come from? So I'm going to share, I want to talk about Adam and Eve. So this was another aha moment that I had, which was really community cats come from owned cats. So in my imaginary world of Newburyport, we had Adam and Eve. Adam lived with one family, Eve lived with the other family. Both of them were not spayed or neutered. You know, Adam started spraying around the house. It got cold. He had been outside. He came in. He started spraying around the house. So family said, Adam, you got to stay outside. And Eve went into heat. And so Eve was really hard to live with too. So the other family down the street pushed Eve out and said, Eve, you got to go live outside. And so Adam and Eve met each other. And then we can all know the rest of the story. And then that's how Adam and Eve, you know, had their kittens. And we had one litter of kittens down on the Newburyport waterfront as the numbers were dwindling, of 11 kittens. One mom had 11 kittens. So also as your numbers go down, the population numbers of your kittens, actually those litter sizes go way up. So it's another interesting statistic that happens. So my aha moment at that point in time was really understanding how important it was to provide affordable spay and neuter options for owned cats. And so that was where then I got the idea of doing the Catmobile and really offering a bulk of our services for owned cats. In 2008, animal shelters were really not providing services for owned cats. And it was really the place where we could make a difference. So I also came up with this idea called the community cat pyramid. So for those of us who are thinking about taking our passion for cats and turning it into action and maybe creating our own groups, you know, I wanted folks to think about the community cat pyramid, because one thing that I started out with was a trap, neuter, return program, but then we fell into doing rescue and adoption. And for those of you who have done rescue and adoption, and also run a sanctuary and done relocation, those are very resource extensive options, where assisting the owned cat population is actually the most affordable and most impactful part of the process. So I modeled this after the food pyramid. So, you know, on the food pyramid, we have our like leafy greens and all that stuff at the bottom, you know, all the healthy food we're all supposed to eat. And at the top is the sugar, the chocolate cake that we're only supposed to have little bits of it. So when we're thinking about our efforts and the organizations that we're creating, I think we need to think about assisting the owned cat populations at an exponential level much higher than what we're doing even at the trap, neuter, return level and the rescue and adoption level and the sanctuary level. So one of my guidelines was, you know, for every 100 cats that our organization adopted out, we were going to spay neuter 1,000 owned cats. That was like my ratio for success. And so when you're sort of thinking about that, you know, how can you ensure that 1,000 owned cats can get either access to low cost or no cost spay neuter services to make a difference. And I've run this type of model in quite a few communities and it's been incredibly successful. So I'm going to just go through these slides really quickly in the effort of in time here. But so the bottom section here, talking about the owned cats, we've got the trap, neuter, return, as well as return to field as being, and it's interesting because some folks don't necessarily feel like that should be sort of a less important priority. And I agree it's important, but I also feel like it still is a reactive. I feel like assisting that owned cat population is the most proactive thing we can do to help cats in our community. And then we have rescue, adoption, and sanctuary and location. So I'm going to talk quickly about some of the numbers and why they mean something. And so I do have a mathematical calculation worksheet that folks can do to evaluate their own communities and be able to figure out the numbers of cats that they need to assist in order to be successful with their programs and really making an impact with cat overpopulation. Due to time here, I'm not going to go into a deep dive on that, but with all of that being said, folks can help me here. Our population in the United States is about 200 million. Is that correct? I got to get my calculator here. 250 million. Somebody knows the population of the United States, right?
Someone said 300 to 330 million in the US.
Thank you so much for that. All right, and then I'm doing my math here. So basically, so each community would have its own sort of ratio because there's a lot of factors that go into play, sort of like your income levels. So each region is different. But if I had to put like a round number average across the United States, I probably would be under that 30 million. I'd be more in probably the 20 million range. But you know, it's a hard estimate. There is a program that's called the DC Cat Count that's being done with HSUS and various other partners. John Boone is one of the researchers on that, and they're actually trying to do like cat sightings like you do with bird watching, bird counting. They're doing cat counting in DC, and at the online cat conference in January, the Community Cats podcast, we're gonna talk about that program. And so we're gonna get a more specific analytical way of being able to determine those appropriate numbers. I will feel very confident in saying that the number of feral cats that we have in the country, I feel strongly the numbers are going down. So this is what really happens in our world. It seems to be that we have, you know, we can easily get wrapped into becoming sanctuaries. We can fall onto doing relocation, rescue and adoption. We tend to spend more of our resources that way, and we spend less resources helping our own cat population, even though I will say things are changing quickly in the industry right now. So this tippy pyramid may not be appropriate within the next 6 to 12 months. But I just wanted to use that as an example of saying where I feel like our resources may be more heavily spent. And we want to make sure that we get our pyramid to stand on a bigger base than what we see right here. I'm going to talk very quickly about birds and cats, sort of the elephant in the room. A lot of people, I know a lot of volunteers that have volunteered at the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society that were also piping plover wardens. We have a huge Audubon Center, as well as a wildlife center in Newburyport, where the Newburyport Cats were located, and we get along quite well. But the reality is that the cat population in that area has declined significantly. So as long as you're doing a well-managed TNR program, you should get along fine with everybody. But I think that you have to have a lot of communication and working well together. And I could spend a whole day talking about this topic. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to speed along here. So I wanted to share with you the story about the Newburyport cats. You know, are there any community cats in Newburyport now? I did spoil the dumpster story, so I told you how those cats worked out. But the Newburyport cats, so we had the 14 feeding stations with 300 cats. We had 2 feeders a day. This is one of the feeding stations we had. We had those slats, which prevented birds from going in. The feeders were all up on 2 levels underneath the feeders. It's called the Fuller feeding station. We had shelters underneath them. These were built by Eagle Scouts, most of them were. And then we also had shelter building days, specific days where we did a whole group of them building the shelters. So just to fast forward through 2008, Zorro, the last kitty. So we started this program in 1992, 2008. Zorro, the kitty, was the last one to pass away. And so we kept a feeding station open. We had closed all of them down but one. We kept one open for about 3 or 4 years just to monitor things, but we knew all the cats. We knew who owned those cats. And we closed that feeding station down, and we continued not to have any cats on the Newburyport waterfront. So Tnr does work and is successful. And the dumpster kitties, all those kittens did get adopted. Most of them lost one eye, a couple of them lost 2 eyes, but they all did get adopted, and the other colony is in control. So we all had happy endings everywhere. So just to share a little bit more about where you can find the Community Cats podcast, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and we just recently got on Pandora. You can find me at Stacy at communitycatspodcast.com. Looks like my email got cut off there, sorry. At Instagram at Community Cats Podcast, Facebook, which is also Community Cats Podcast on Facebook, and we are also on Twitter. And then, so we have an episode that comes out every Tuesday, and we are almost at 400 episodes. So there's lots of binge listening available there. And we have some upcoming events. So we have our Tnr certification workshops. Our next one is the 9th of January. We have our online cat conference, which is going to be the 29th through the 31st in 2021. We have a United Spay Alliance online conference. That's going to be the 26th through the 28th. We have Trappers Tips and Tricks, Behavior Day, and it kind of goes on and on from there. You can find out about all of this at the Community Cats Podcast website. So I want to thank everybody for allowing me to present and share tonight, and I'm happy to take some more questions.
All right, we had 2 come up in the chat. How do you know it's safe to separate a mama from her litter during trapping? Would it help to spray a trap with pheromones before trapping to help calm the cat?
Yes, on the pheromones, sure. That's good. And also the sheet that goes over it. So that's a good idea too. And then separating the mom from the kittens. So is the question temporarily separating or when to take mom away for kittens away, to be adopted and that kind of thing. If that's the case from a feral mom cat, I'd pull the kittens away at like about 6 weeks of age. Some say 8. So there's differing theories there, but you want to make sure that those kittens, I don't know if you've had the feral kittens do the fake hissing, like the pretend hissing, which is always so endearing. But you certainly don't want the kittens hanging out with mom too long, especially if mom is going to go back. And you want mom to be able to go back too, if you're going to return mom back to the colony.
Okay, and then how do you tell the difference between a stray and a feral? If there's just one cat and not a colony, is it considered a stray? If you can't touch the cat, is it more likely feral?
Yeah, so you'll use behavior as identifying tools, and stray cats tend to not do well in the wild, so their coat's not going to look as good. They may have ear mites, goopy eyes. They tend to physically not look so well, and especially a stray. If a stray is friendly, then you'll be able to examine the cat better also. Ferals are going to be skittish, their ears are going to be flat. They're just not going to want to engage with you, so they're going to run off. So a lot of it's based on behavior. And I'm going to add to that too, because we spend a lot of time worrying about whether it's a friendly or a feral. I worry more about spayed or not spayed, or neutered and not neutered, because it doesn't matter. They both can still have kittens, and that's the name of one of the key names of the game is not having those kittens be born in the first place.
We don't have any more questions in the chat, but if anyone wants to unmute themselves, you're welcome to do so and ask a question.
All right, I'm going to stop share so I can see people, if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. It's very interesting. I'm used to being the host. I'm not used to being on this other side of the fence here.
And it's
So-
hard when you're screen sharing because you can only see your presentation. So if people want to even turn your video on to ask a question, you're welcome to do that too.
Hi, this is Kim. I'm going to ask a question.
Go for it.
Hi. Hey, so I have been caring for a small colony in my apartment complex. I've already TNR'd them. There's a mama cat and there are 2 kittens. Well, actually they're young cats now. They're about 7 months. And everything has been going smoothly. They seem happy and healthy in their outdoor environment. However, somebody recently left a bunch of food out, which has now attracted a new feral cat. I do plan to TNR this new cat, but in the meantime, he's causing a lot of issues with the other cats that are already there. There's a lot of territorial issues, and one of the cats actually went missing because he had scared him off. They're fighting. So do you have any recommendations for how I can better, integrate this new cat? I'm hoping that the TNR will help. I think he's a male, so I'm thinking that that's probably what's going on.
Yep.
But other than TNR, is there anything else that you can recommend, or do you have any thoughts on that situation?
Yeah, so definitely get them neutered as soon as you can, because that's going to resolve a lot of issues. It may take a couple of weeks afterwards because
Okay.
a neutered male's still going to be stinky like an unneutered male for a little while. So you're going to have to be a little bit patient with regards to that. Now, I mean, I don't know if you can figure out who is doing that feeding thing, but you're going to have to figure that out if you're going to trap the cat, or you have to trap them with a drop trap in order to be able to work around that issue. The other thing is creating different feeding zones. So creating 2 feeding zones to split the cats up, so that then hopefully, he would go one way and then others would go the other way.
Okay.
Because you might be hitting a tipping point in terms of population size. So you might, rather than just feeding in one place, you might have to feed spread them out and feed them in different places. And then if you want to try and acclimate them, you slowly, it's like you do with your own cats when you're trying to acclimate them in the houses, then you start moving the food bowls closer and closer and closer to each other.
Got it.
The neutering is going to be, definitely a huge help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I did relocate the feeding station of the original cats because I noticed that they were super scared of this new cat. So I am trying to separate them for now until I get him TNR'd. And then, so it's good to know that I can slowly move them back together if needed later on.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions for Stacy? All right, well, thank you everybody for attending. We're exactly on time at 7:30, so I'll let everybody get going with your evening. And thank you so much, Stacy, for speaking tonight. It was so informative, and I really appreciate having you here. I think everybody learned a lot and really enjoyed having you here, so much appreciated.
My pleasure. And I did include, there'll be a couple of handouts about the community cat pyramid, and one is a flyer, and then if you're part of an organization, you can put your own logo in on that flyer. So as a way to share with the public the importance of having spay neuter for your own cats, and really working on that as a solution to cat overpopulation. So I really hope you'll turn your passion for cats into action, everybody. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with me tonight.
All right, thank you. Bye, everybody. And we will send out the recording as well as the PDF of the slides. Have a great night.
Thank you.